MarketPro, as we're placing CMOs on a year-to-year, day-to-day basis, it's amazing how the role is evolving, but it's also amazing how onboarding of CMOs is evolving. It's always been critical that the first 100 days you get off to a good start, because it's really going to set you up for success. And so then the question becomes, how do you do that? Most folks aren't starting a new job very often, so it's a new skill and it's a new thing you need to learn as you start that opportunity. But it's really important that when you're 90 days in or you're 6 months in, that you've built that right foundation. So the question becomes, what are those steps? And the first step is really all about doing research, finding the right data, and making sure that you have the right information to be on the right path. And what's really interesting about that is that needs to start very early. So you've resigned from your last job and you're starting your new role in 2, 3, or 4 weeks. The time to start planning and the time to start figuring out what you're going to do your first 100 days is now, right? You want to set yourself up to be successful. So even though you're still working your old job and clearing things out, you should be spending an hour a day, 6 days a week focused on your new role and getting yourself set to be there, right? It's very important in that time between when you've resigned and the time between when you start that you have a couple key conversations, right? You definitely want to have a conversation with the CEO or whoever it is that you're reporting to, making sure that you understand his or her expectations for your first 100 days and what the goals are for the first year within the role. Have that conversation before you get there. The other really key conversation to have before you start is to make sure you're having a conversation with your counterpart in IT, right? Marketing and IT are working so closely together now that it's really important for you to have that information on what they're looking for and how that partnership is going to start. And it says so much about you that you're reaching out to make these happen even before you get there. And it was really interesting. We placed a CMO about 3-4 months ago, and I told the CEO, I said, look, I want to set up a conversation between the CIO and the CMO before they get there. And the CEO said, I really don't think that's necessary. They can just connect when they start. And I said, well, ask your CIO if he wants to have that conversation. And the feedback I then got was, oh my gosh, the CIO was thrilled to have a conversation before our new CMO got here. He said he already had 2 pages of notes written down for things he wanted to talk about. So now that you've done as much research as you can before you walked in the door, the day you get there, that's obviously going to continue. You're ultimately going to have better access to data and more information once you're inside the firewall than before you got there. So really your assessment phase will continue for the first couple weeks that you're there as you're creating your plan. The next step is so important, right? And it's really the evaluation phase. And it's going to take from day 1 through day 90, day 100 to complete the evaluation phase. But it's too often that we see CMOs only complete a piece of this and not all of it, right? It's obvious that you've got to evaluate the marketing and understand what they've done historically and understand how that's got to change in order for you to go forward and hit the goals of the organization and all the reasons why you were hired, right? The other key thing that's really important for an proper evaluation is looking at the team, right? So within the first 90 days, you should understand, 1, do I have the right org chart in place? So don't worry about the team yet, but do I have the right roles in place to move forward with the organization the way I need to? Once I've got that assessment done, then I've got to be able to assess the team, right? And make sure that the team is ready to step up to the level that I need and that they're going to fit well into those roles. It's also really important that you're communicating well during this phase, right? You want everyone on the team to see that you're valuing their input. You want peers within the organization to see that you're engaging in meaningful discussions to get their input. And really, it's the time where you have to be able to manage well up, manage well across, and manage well down. So within the first 2 weeks, it's critical that you meet as many people as possible. The worst thing that can happen is you hire a new CMO and nobody knows where you are or who you are, and those relationships don't get built. You really want to meet all the key cross-functional direct reports and C-level leaders within the first 2 weeks and as quickly as possible. So as you're going through that evaluation phase, right, it's really important to make sure that you and the CEO have alignment. At the end of the day, you could be doing all the right things, and even if they're 100% spot on correct for the organization, if they're different than the vision the CEO has, you can have an issue there. So make sure that week to week in your one-on-ones, you're making sure you update them on progress, and every 30 days say, how does this align with where we are regarding expectations, right? They may have unrealistic expectations in the beginning because they don't understand marketing to the depth that you do. A lot of these stages will ultimately overlap. We said it's going to take 90 to 100 days to complete your evaluation, right? But pretty early on in the process, you want to be able to start to create your vision for marketing and your plan for how things are going to be different and what's going to get done. And within that, there really needs to be a short-term vision and a long-term vision. So where do we need to be a year from now, and how are we pathing ourselves towards that? And what are some short-term quick wins that we can get on the board? And how do we go ahead and put those plans in place? Because really within the first 100 days, you're going to want to have some plans that you put in place. You're going to want to have some results that you can ultimately measure and monitor and report on. It's really important that within 100 days to put some quick wins on the board. And it's totally possible anytime you walk into a new role, even if there was a great CMO there before, there's going to be things you see that they didn't. So it's always possible to get those quick wins on the board. It's important to do that to build your own credibility, so then you can go back and make changes as need be. The other thing that's really going to be possible for you to accomplish, right, within those first 100 days is you've gone in and you've assessed, do we have the right org chart? Do we have the right structure in place? Then you've taken some time to figure out, do we have the right team in place? And that's not something that's going to be done in 100 days, right? It will take time to evaluate the team, but there will be some incremental changes you can make to the org chart and some incremental structural changes you can make. You may find that there's a person in one role and they'd be much better suited for another role. So you can move them into that new role, be able to report on their progress and show that you're utilizing talent more efficiently than your predecessor, and that's always a big win. And then it's really important, right, within your first 100 days as a new CMO that you're able to take some concrete action steps that are going to move the business forward and get a few quick short-term wins on the board, but get a few longer-term projects kicked off, right? Get some things rolling that show the organization that you have both a short-term focus and a long-term plan. And that really is going to go a long way to give your manager, your peer level group, and really importantly, your team, the confidence they need that you're the right fit for the role.